Finishing out the first half of the tests, for test 3. Really, the end is somewhat easier than the stuff that was just there in the middle. Basically, the end focuses on these perfect square trinomials and these difference of squares. So I'm just looking for a pattern for these. For these perfect square trinomials, I can factor them the same way I factored the polynomials at the start. But really, if I see that it's in this section, if I see it's number 12, I can just say what's half this middle term. So 6 divided by 2 equals 3. It should be the case then that if I square that, I get the number at the end. That's how I know that half the middle term, in this case a positive 6, half of positive 6 is positive 3, is the squared term that I'm getting there. So you absolutely can do it out where you just say parentheses, parentheses, x and x, bring down the positive, same means also positive, multiplies to 9, adds to 6, 3 and 3 does that. But there's a shortcut here because we know it's going to be a perfect square trinomial. So if you see the shortcut and you just say half the middle term, you can jump right to there. For a difference of squares like number 13, we need to remember that a squared minus b squared becomes a minus b, a plus b. So in this case, the square root of x squared is just x. So I'm going to put just x in each of my parentheses, one positive, one negative. Then the square root of 36, really what I'm saying is something times itself equals 36. In this case, it would be 6 for each of these. For number 14, I look at it and see there's only 2 terms. Both of them are perfect squares, so I recognize this is a difference of squares. It's a little more difficult than this one because I've got 2 different variables to deal with and 2 different coefficients, but it's still the same general idea. I need to think what times itself gives me this, what times itself gives me this. So for the first term, 16a squared, 4 times itself gives me 16, a times itself gives me a squared. So in my first position, I'm going to put 4a and 4a. For the second term, I have 49b squared. Something times itself gives me 49. Specifically, 7 times itself gives me 49. Then something times itself gives me b squared, specifically b. I make one of them positive, one of them negative. Final question on the test is a little tricky. That said, here it is a multiple choice question. Basically, they've put these numbers a little bit out of order. If I rearrange them, I'd want to see it as 25x squared plus 40x plus 16. Because it's in the section for perfect square trinomials, we know it's going to be something times itself. So to find what the x is, we say what times itself would have given me 25x squared. In that case, it's 5x. I do the same thing for the last term. I know it's something times itself. What times itself would give me 16? In that case, it's 4. What I don't know is the sign in between them. Because if I would have squared negative 4 or positive 4, I would have gotten to the 16. So the way that I know the sign between them is I look at the sign of the middle term. Since this is a positive 40, it must be a positive in between them. So 5x plus 4 is what's being squared. That was answer choice B.